Hi everyone and welcome to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're looking at doing a bit of travel around.
Travel?
Yeah.
That would be great.
We're going to visit an interesting new country through the medium of our magazine. Now, you could argue whether this is actually a country or not. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's first talk about some of the places around it. Mike, have you ever had the chance to travel to Hong Kong or even mainland China?
I have been to Hong Kong several times.
Yeah.
I like Hong Kong. It's a great city with so many interesting things to do, fantastic restaurants and food. So really like Hong Kong. But of course, it's been at least 3 or 4 years since I was there. In China, I only went there one time, went to Shanghai to see the F1 Grand Prix, which was exciting, but we were really only there 4 or 5 days. And of course, spent a lot of that time at a track watching cars drive around in a big circle. So I didn't really experience China too much.
No.
How about you?
Pretty much the same. I've been to Hong Kong a handful of times, got married there, I've done some hiking around bits of the north part and some of the new territories.
Yeah, lovely.
Been to China, Shanghai, as yourself, once for performing. So we got shown around a bit, saw some cool places.
That's nice.
Ate a lot of really good food. And in one of my trips to Hong Kong, I also visited the place we're going to be talking about today. That is the city, country, region, whatever you want to call it, of Macau. Let's read through today's article and find out more about it.
Reading.
Macau. Fun facts about China's other special territory. Many people know a lot about Hong Kong. But how much do you know about its neighbor, Macau? Read on to discover some interesting facts about this engaging place. While Macau is a territory of China, it is a special administrative region, SAR. One effect of this is that Macau's people enjoy more liberties than mainland Chinese. Macau also has a good deal of autonomy. In many ways, it functions like its own country, with its own money and visa requirements. These circumstances exist because of Macau's history. It was a Portuguese territory for about 400 years. The Portuguese arrived in Macau in the 16th century. Macau was finally returned to China in 1999. Macau is one of the smallest territories in the world, measuring just 30 square kilometers. That's only about 10% of the size of Taipei City. It's also very urban. The number of people living in that tiny space is in the neighborhood of 680,000. That makes Macau the most crowded territory in the world.
So the article starts kind of how we started, and it says many people know a lot about Hong Kong, but how much do you know about its neighbor, Macau?
That is a very good question. Hong Kong is a world-famous international city, but Macau, I don't know if everyone would know where it is and some interesting things about it. So let's find out some interesting things about this rather interesting place. Read on to discover some interesting facts about this engaging place. Well, I called it interesting. The article calls it engaging. Engaging, interesting, appealing, attractive. Something that's just kind of, it holds your fascination. You have a lot of questions about it. You enjoy spending your time doing it or experiencing it in some way. An engaging person is someone you would meet for the first time, and 5 or 10 minutes later you'd find yourself listening to this person and being really interested in them, maybe starting to become friends with them or something like that. Or if you go to an engaging place, this is an attractive place, a nice place, the kind of place you would tell all your friends about and recommend that they go to too, because it was interesting, it was appealing, it was engaging. Here's Aaron. Aaron told us some very engaging stories about traveling around South America. Some exciting stories, some romantic stories, some funny stories, but it was all entertaining and engaging.
So let's start out with what is Macau? The article says, while Macau is a territory of China, it is a special administrative region, or SAR. We'll explain what that means in just a moment, but first let's take a look at the word territory. So when we talk about a territory, we mean a certain particular piece of land, and we often use this word when we're talking about who owns it, who is the government of that land, who runs it. And we often talk about territories, not just as in, okay, this is the land of the country, but maybe an island or another part that's further away from that country, but still belongs to it. The UK has a number of small territories still around the world in different places, like the island of Gibraltar near Spain, for example. Taiwan is saying that there are some islands, the Diaoyutai, I think it's pronounced, that are Taiwan's territory. Japan says they are Japan's territory. China says they're China's territory. And everyone kind of argues. So territory just means land, and we often use it to talk about who it belongs to. Here's another example. France still owns 2 territories near Canada, the small islands of Saint-Pierre and Miquelon. So Macau is Chinese territory, but rather than just being another city, it's an SAR. What do we mean?
That's right, a special administrative or administrative region. This is a political division of China, so it is part of China, but it is under control of this. So it's under control, I should say, of the central government. That's in Beijing with Xi Jinping. He would be their president. But these SAR territories, they have a little more autonomy and freedom. They have their own local government. They can set some of their own local rules and laws in these SAR territories. Hong Kong and Macau, of course, are the 2 that we're talking about. Now, cities in China like Shanghai or Beijing or Nanjing, they would have their own city government, but they wouldn't have as much ability to make their own laws and have their own rules as some of these SAR territories. So they're part of China, but also a little bit more free, have a little bit more freedom to set their own laws and have their own politics.
Yeah, we're going to explain this further as the article goes on. It says, one effect of this is that Macau's people enjoy more liberties than mainland Chinese. So when we talk about liberty, or we could say liberties, it is a countable noun, we mean a particular kind of freedom, usually a right, something you are allowed to do. If you have a lot of liberty or a lot of liberties, you've got all kinds of freedoms. You can say what you like, do what you like, you can follow whatever rules you want to. If your liberties are restricted or limited, then it means there's stuff you can't do, you can't say, you don't have the right to do. Here's an example. People in South Korea have many more liberties than those in North Korea.
That's right. Of course, they can vote for their leaders, they can travel freely, look at anything on the internet. North Korea, they don't have those freedoms or those liberties. And here we also talked about mainland China. Sometimes people just refer to that as the mainland. But mainland basically means the largest land area of a country. These are probably countries that control a big area of land on one of the main continents, but maybe also control small islands or territories in other parts of the world even. But the mainland would be the largest area. Of course, people in Hong Kong would call it people who live in Shanghai or Beijing or Nanjing. Those people would live on the mainland to the people who live maybe in Hong Kong or somewhere like that. And I've also heard this term used from people who are from Hawaii, the American state that's an island out there in the Pacific Ocean. If you're from New York or California, they might refer to that also as the mainland or the main land area of America.
Okay, so the article continues and talks about what it means to be an SAR. Macau also has a good deal of autonomy. We're going to explain that word autonomy. We've kind of mentioned it once or twice in just a moment, but first we're going to take some time to look at today's language in focus. So in that sentence, we use the phrase a good deal of something. We could also say a great deal of something. And this is just another way to say a lot of. There is a large amount. And we generally use it for uncountable nouns, a great deal of autonomy. Autonomy is uncountable. There's a great deal of water on the floor. Water is uncountable. If we want to use a similar phrase with a countable noun, we can use a large number of. There are a large number of people here, for example. We wouldn't say a good deal of people because people is countable. There are similar phrases like this as well. Plenty of, a lot of, a large quantity of, and so on. Here's an example of how we can use a great deal with an uncountable noun. There is a great deal of money in this wallet. Should we take it or should we report it to the police? So Macau has a great deal of autonomy. What does this word mean?
Well, autonomy is kind of like freedom or liberty, the ability to make your own decisions. We can also often talk about this as being a government that can make its own laws. The government doesn't have to follow laws set by some bigger group far away in another place. They can set their own laws, raise their own taxes, have their own ability to do the things that they want. You also have autonomy. If your parents aren't telling you to stay home, if you're over the age of 18 or 21, you can kind of go where you want, do what you want, live where you want, or live how you want. So that's your own personal autonomy. But then we also talk about political or national autonomy. This is countries who have the freedom to do things the way they want and live life the way they want.
So what does this mean in kind of practical day-to-day terms? Like if you went to Macau, what would you notice that was different? Well, the article says in many ways Macau, functions like its own country with its own money and visa requirements.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's right. You can use Hong Kong dollars there, but they also have their own money. They don't give you a stamp in your passport, but they will put a bit of paper in your passport to say, yeah, because I went there from Hong Kong on a ferry. You didn't really have to cross a real passport border that way, but they did check.
Okay, yeah, that's the same thing that happened to me. So this is one of the functions, or this is how it functions.
That's right. Here we're using the word function as a verb, to function. That means to work or to operate in a particular way. Macau functions like a real country, meaning this is how it works, this is how it operates, this is what it feels like. So you might ask somebody, can you please show me how this functions? I've never used a 3D printer before. In other words, how do I work it? How do I make it do stuff?
There you go.
So we've mentioned the money is one thing and visa is another.
That's right. Visas are travel documents, kind of like a passport, but visas will come from specific individual countries that you, as a foreigner, want to enter into. And the country just wants to know kind of what you're doing there, how long you'll be there, and you might have to pay a small amount of money to get this visa. Certain countries will require visas, especially with people from other parts of the world or other countries. In many cases, though, especially if you have a British, Canadian, Taiwan passport, you often don't need a visa. You just tell them why you're traveling and they'll let you stay there for a few months or something like that. But if you are going there to live and you're a foreigner, you have to probably get a visa for work or for study or something like that. And as I said, some countries require you to get a tourist visa, something you might just get at the airport, or you might have to apply and get it a few weeks or months before you travel. But basically, the visa will allow you to enter that country as a foreigner.
Yeah, and it's a visa requirement. The word requirement is the noun form of require. If you require something, you need it or you must have it. So a requirement is something that a rule, a law, like a contract, anything like that, something official, it states that you must do. You have to have it, you have to do it, otherwise you can't do what you want to do. For example, it's a requirement that anyone riding in a car must wear a seatbelt, okay? Now, it's not a requirement in terms of the car won't start unless you put your seatbelt on, but if the police see you, they'll go, no, that's the rules. You've got to wear a seatbelt. That's required, again, the verb, by law, if you're not wearing it, you've broken the law, we can give you a ticket. Or maybe they'll just say, don't be an idiot, put it on.
Yes, it's also just a good idea. All right, back to the article. It says, these circumstances, these special situations that allow Macau this autonomy and whatnot, these circumstances exist because of Macau's history. Yeah, it all developed over many decades or even centuries, and we're going to find out more about that. But first, we have to talk about this word, circumstance. So a circumstance is basically a special situation when something is happening and there are particular things going on. Circumstances, of course, change all the time as we go through our days. We might have certain serious circumstances, certain serious kinds of situations, or things that are very normal daily circumstances like being late for work because you can't catch the bus. But when you explain to someone what happened, what went on, what were the different things going on when you were trying to do something, these are the circumstances. Circumstances can become difficult if you're late and the weather's bad and you forgot your phone at home. Oh, these are very difficult circumstances to find yourself in, but also circumstances can get better when the situation gets better, when the facts and the events and what is going on around you happens to change. Well, those are the changing circumstances.
So what is Macau's history? What is it about its past that led to these circumstances of being an SAR? Well, the article says, and you may know this, it, again, Macau, was a Portuguese territory for about 400 years.
Very interesting. So Portugal, the country there in Europe, right next to Spain, they were actually in charge of Macau for a very long time, 400 years. And yes, that math checks out. It says the Portuguese arrived in Macau in the 16th century. Yeah, back then the Portuguese were great explorers, right?
Yep.
Vasco da Gama and people like that traveled around the world, mapped out many parts of the world, and were some of the first people to make contact with people in China and also people here in Taiwan and Japan as well.
Yeah, that's why we get the Ilha Formosa, that's Portuguese.
There you go.
So we see that Macau was finally returned to China in 1999. So not that long ago, in fact, more recently than Hong Kong was returned by the British.
Yeah, that's true, but just right around the same time. Macau is one of the smallest territories in the world, measuring just 30 square kilometers. Wow, that is a small place. If you think Hong Kong's not too big, well, Macau is even smaller. And exactly how small is that?
Well, we put this in the article to give you guys an idea. That's only about 10% of the size of Taipei City.
Wow.
So it's like one neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's like Wanhua.
Basically, the area around Taipei 101 with all those shopping malls and whatnot, that kind of size. And it says it's also very urban. Of course, if you have all those people living in a small place, they won't be living on giant farms with fields and forests around them. No, it will be very much a city situation, and that's why we use this adjective urban. Urban is anything of the city, in the city, by the city, or like a city. For example, the country of Chad has few large urban areas. Chad is a country in northern Africa, kind of on the edge of the desert there. They don't have big cities there. They have a lot of rural areas. That's the opposite of urban. That means farmland, farm country, that kind of thing. Urban, though, think big buildings, busy streets, buses, cars, airplanes, all the stuff you associate with big cities.
Yeah, and Macau is quite big and it is quite crowded. We see in the article the number of people living in that tiny space is in the neighborhood of 680,000. Now, that doesn't mean they all live in one neighborhood. Here we're using a special phrase, in the neighborhood of. And we use this phrase to mean the same as roughly, about, around. So it's around 680,000. It's in that neighborhood, it's in the same area.
Okay, like if you're trying to find someone's house and you're in the neighborhood, you're close, but you're not exactly there, but very close for all purposes. Back to the article, that makes having this crowded urban area with many people living together, that makes Macau the most crowded territory in the world. Wow, so you can probably find more crowded cities cities and things like that.
Sure.
For a territory, for kind of one piece of land with its own government and that kind of idea, Macau is number 1. So that would be higher than Singapore, which would also be crowded.
Hong Kong.
Higher than Hong Kong, higher than the Vatican City right there in Rome, where all the priests and bishops live. So if you want to feel crowded in with a lot of other people, Macau is a good, well, actually Taipei is a good place to go.
Yeah.
But Macau as a country is even more crowded.
Well, we're going to learn more about Macau and some interesting things about it tomorrow. But right now it's time for our For You Chat question.
For You Chat.
So our question is, would you like to go to Macau? Why or why not? Now, we've both been.
Yes.
So I guess the question is, would we like to go back?
I would very much like to go back to Macau. I've been to Hong Kong, I don't even know, 9, 10, 12 times, many times. Macau just once.
Yep.
I went with some friends from Canada. It was August, it was hot. We walked around, we saw all the sights, but I think like you, we went there in the morning from Hong Kong on a boat and we came back very late that evening from Macau back to Hong Kong. So we never stayed there.
Okay.
We only ate, I think, one meal when we were there. It was a very quick trip. So yeah, I think I'd like to go. Maybe a 2 or 3 day weekend, I think would be nice.
See a bit more.
See a bit more. I think we saw one of the casinos. We saw a little bit of the old city, but that was about it.
Yeah, pretty much the same. We came back pretty late. We did have a chance to go into the Venetian casino.
Okay, that might have been the one.
Yeah, we had a meal in there, and we didn't do any gambling or playing.
Yeah.
Of course, you can in Macau. It's legal there. It's absolutely fine. I would like to go and see something like a big boxing match in the Macau casino.
They do have a lot of sports there,
Yeah, a big
don't they?
sporting event, and kind of because the casino we went in a bit early. It was very quiet. It didn't get much atmosphere. So I would like to go and check out that part of Macau, maybe see the nightlife a bit more. I saw that we went to the big old fort and the streets and checked out the big plaza where the fountains. So yeah, I'm kind of more interested in seeing the nightlife side rather than just walking around the city. Although I'd do that too.
Yeah, it was very nice.
Absolutely, I would go back to Macau. There's also something in Macau that I didn't do last time, but I would like to do this time. It's something I think we're going to mention in day 2. So join us tomorrow to find out what it is. We'll see you then. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. You mean... Vocabulary Review.
Engaging. Rosalina didn't find the movie very engaging. She was quite bored by the end. Territory. In the past, Britain claimed the U.S. as a part of its territory. Liberty. When Nicholas went to school in Canada, he had the liberty to wear any clothes he wanted. Function. Change the oil in your car regularly to keep it functioning well. Requirement. It's a requirement that all new workers attend training this Tuesday. Urban. Jason likes living in an urban environment because there are always many things to see and do.
智慧小补帖
Special Administrative Region, SAR. Mainland. Autonomy. Visa. Circumstance.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net